sure I can cut this down and make it look professional.
That is just a small portion of the unprofessional nonsense Sophia had to contend with when I spoke to her today. Hello and welcome to the first ever Physics Journal Club interviews, where we've been talking to Sophia Chen, the science writer who wrote the article in week 10. It was lovely to chat to her, and we're really grateful for her giving up some time to answer your questions. As it's the first ever interview, there are a few little teething problems, like me pausing my audio.
It just said my internet is unstable. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Some of the audio was a little shaky on my end.
Okay. I'll just cut that bit out.
And me completely forgetting what the questions were meant to be.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. What's the next one?
But this is not a reflection on Sophia as a guest. She was absolutely wonderful. It just highlights my inadequacies as a potential YouTuber. I can totally see why, as we'll discuss in the interview, YouTubers like Dianna Cowern have a team of writers to help them out because there is so much going on trying to produce a video yourself. Hopefully you will enjoy the interview that I've managed to piece together though, because Sophia gives some wonderful answers about what it's like to be a science writer. Enjoy.
And I think we'll just jump straight in. So James sent in a question and asked, what initially got you interested in physics?
Well, I got into physics in my first year in college. And the reason that I liked it so much is that, like compared to my prior science education, it didn't involve memorizing things.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think my favorite thing that we did was we would do these estimation questions. Like we called them Fermi questions in the US. Where it's basically like the canonical question is like, how many pianos are there? How many piano tuners are there in New York? And so like,
okay.
So like basically they're questions that don't have a definite right answer, but you can use like physics tools to like get to an answer. And I really liked the fact that there wasn't a exact right answer, but that wasn't the point. The point was to sort of apply concepts to then get to an educated response. And so that's what drew me to physics. To be honest, like, I don't think anybody is that interested in like boxes on springs, like literally boxes on springs or pulleys or like, you know, like a ball on a string. But the thing is that you can then use that very like bare bones framework to then think about much more complicated things. And I think physics really allows you to do that.
Yeah, completely agree. What made you go for science writing rather than science research?
Well, science research is the day-to-day work of it is not super structured because inherently you are trying to answer a question that has never been answered. And so you don't know what you're doing. And that's the point of it, is you don't know what you're doing. And so you can often find yourself working on something for weeks, maybe months, like, and it turns out like you were on the wrong track to begin with. And it feels like you wasted a bunch of time. And so it's very slow and, you know, it's risky. And I also don't have like, I don't have like a great attention span. Like I like to do different things. I like to mix it up. And so like, I would say my experience with science research was that you had to really, had to like dive deep into one topic, and there wasn't so much room to like learn about a lot of different things. And so the reason I like science writing is that the workflow is a lot more structured. Like the product at the end of it is very clear. Like I'm supposed to write an article, I'm supposed to write a script, and then also I can juggle many different topics at the same time and get to learn a lot.
Okay, nice.
I went and did an internship at the local radio station, and I worked with this radio producer who was a science journalist, and she told me about this like fellowship program that basically it's called the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship, and basically it supports scientists to work for a summer doing science journalism, and that was kind of my way into it. And yeah, so that's how I got my science. That's how I figured out that science journalism was a profession.
Okay, fair enough. So how was it that you actually got into the radio station bit? Because it would, to me, that's like a difficult step to get into. Getting into the world of media is not easy at all. Where did you make that contact?
Well, first of all, it was unpaid, so I think that made it easier. And the other thing is that it was literally on my university campus, and I came from a small town and also a small university, like of around 2,000 students, and so I was kind of used to like going into places and being like, can I do something here? And so like,
okay,
yeah. and I think I had met somebody through the community, like who worked there, and I expressed interest. And so she made the introduction to the producer that I ended up working with. Not everybody can afford to take on an unpaid internship. The reason I did it was I also had a graduate school stipend at the time, and it was something that I really wanted to do. And that, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, okay, cool.
What does a typical day look like? Well, every day is different depending on where I am in the process of writing something. Like sometimes I am working on pitches. So like if I have to come up with ideas of like what I want to write about. And so I'll be like reading the news, or I'll be reading like papers that come out, or like, so science journalists can get access to papers before they are published, as long as we agree not to write about them until they're published. Like it's called an embargo. And so like I'll look at those papers that are about to come out, see if anything piques my interest. I often have interviews scheduled. Like if I've gotten a piece commissioned, like I have to find sources to talk to, usually the author of the paper that I'm writing about, or a researcher in that area. And then I will usually spend some time writing. But yeah, like every day is different.
Okay, that's cool. So there's a few people then asked, you kind of started to touch on some of these already. So Kitty asked, how do you choose the topics? And I guess it's just that you're constantly on the lookout for new ideas. Is there any place in particular that you look the most, do you think?
Well, I look a lot on Archive,
Okay.
and that's for several reasons. One of the reasons is that like I mostly write about physics, and so like, you know, physicists use Archive so much.
Yeah.
And the other reason is that a lot of those papers other science writers haven't written about yet because they're so new.
Okay.
So I also look at, you know, the other big journals like Nature, Science, and like physical review letters. So I'll look there. And then another place that is interesting, well, I like to write about AI, and I'm trying to write more about it. And just like interesting things people do with data. And so I will try to read like blogs on that, or like things like that, to see what people are talking about.
It's interesting because with Journal Club, that's kind of what the students have been doing. So they know what Archive is. They've seen some papers from Archive. I guess if people haven't heard of Archive before, it's a preprint server where researchers put their work before it goes through peer review and gets published. So it's properly hot off the press research, which has got its pros and its cons, I guess, because you must be reading some stuff that by the time it's published, it'll be completely different or completely disproven and stuff. Has that happened before?
That hasn't happened. Well, actually that happened one time where like there was a paper about with like claims of superconductivity, and I guess like like room temperature superconductivity.
Yeah.
And this is a few years ago, so I might be getting some of the details wrong, but basically these researchers put this preprint online, and then a lot of like physicists started gossiping about it and like talking about it, and like they were very skeptical, and there was this basically there were a lot of physicists calling for them to like release more information so that they could try to replicate the experiment. But then these researchers were very closed-mouthed, and so I didn't write about that paper in isolation. Like I was attracted to it because there was all this controversy and like people
like the wider story going on around it as well.
Yeah, and so when I write about stories on arXiv, like, or actually just any science story, like one of the requirements for like a journalistic publication is that you have to go ask for an outside independent commenter to put it in context. And usually I also try to mention that the article has not been peer reviewed yet. Like I say, like it's from arXiv or whatever.
Yeah. How do you approach reading research from topics or areas that, you know, aren't necessarily your expertise?
Well, I think so if we're talking about physics research, like I think one of the one of my techniques is like directly from Physics 101 is like I try to picture what they're describing, and I don't do a formal like free body diagram, but I often think about forces because that can give me like an intuitive idea of like,
okay.
so like physicists are often studying some system, and so I'm like, okay, this system, like is it spherical? Like, or is it, you know, like what is it? Like what is the sort of rough shape, and like what are the forces involved, and like what is the thing that they are asking? So like I try to I try not to get bogged down by the jargon, and like because the papers are very detailed, and that's great for when you understand what's going on. But like just to start, I will ask like, what is the question they're trying to answer, and then try to picture what's going on.
Okay, fair enough. And how do you do it when it's not necessarily a simple problem? So kind of the things you described there are quite classical bits of physics. You know, like, can I treat it as a sphere, or like you said earlier, can I treat it like a spring? What do you do when it's like a quantum mechanical thing that's already difficult to get your head around? How do you view it then?
Well, actually, I am writing something that is about like matter interferometry, so like molecules interfering. I actually, to be honest, like, so like it depends on the audience that I'm writing for, but like when I'm writing about things like, you know, like quantum interference, to first order, it's really easiest to just describe it classically and then say, add on like how it's not classical later.
Okay.
Because if you start with the quantum mechanics of it, I think often the reader gets confused immediately. So like one technique in communicating physics is to say it's kind of like this, and so like people are like, oh, I get that, and then you say like, but not really, and then you can clarify, and so and then people get the sense. But that's mostly how I approach the writing. That's not about how I understand it. I guess with quantum mechanics, I really rely on my quantum mechanics education. So like, I don't know how I would answer, like if you have not taken a quantum mechanics course yet, I would say you should take a quantum mechanics course.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I have a shortcut to understanding quantum mechanics papers if you have not taken one.
Yeah.
Well, I think what keeps me motivated is like having a deadline. So
okay.
like, so like when I was in school, it was like I needed to do a homework assignment, or like, you know, I had an exam, so like I had to learn it by a certain time. And so now, like, it's the same way. Like I keep myself motivated by having a deadline. and if I'm frustrated, just like do something else.
And then just like
come back.
churn away in the background, hope
Yeah.
that you come back to it a little bit clearer.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Do you write a piece and then send it out to publications? Or you kind of mentioned pitching as well, that you have an idea for something, then you pitch it, and then I guess you flesh it out and make a bigger article? Or do you get commissioned? Or what are the ratios between those?
So I would say I pitch like the vast majority of my stories. And so so you don't send like a finished piece in, and like, because often the publication has a particular voice, or like they want to like be able to have the back and forth with the writer as it's coming together, so that, like, you know, it fits the format, or the voice of their publication. And sometimes I get assigned stories, so like an editor will be like, I would definitely want to do a piece on XYZ, like, are you interested? And then those will happen sometimes.
Okay, fair enough.
The first thing I ever wrote was at my internship. So like the fellowship, like I had an internship at Wired magazine, and so the editor gave me my first assignment, and so like I got it. That was how I started writing, was through this internship. And then after the internship, I had this portfolio, and that's really crucial to showing editors that you can write, more so than a degree. And so I also, from that internship, like built up some connections, where I, like, do you know Physics World? That's in the UK. Yeah. So like, someone I knew was like, Physics World is looking for freelancers. And so, I contacted the editor at Physics World, and they were like, yeah. And so then I started writing for them. And then there is a certain amount of like cold emailing people and being like, hey, I'm a physics writer. So I would say like pitching, there's multiple steps to it, but one important step is like building a relationship with the editor. And so like I had cold pitched somebody, and I got rejected. Like basically you get rejected a lot, but if you want to write for publication, like it's good to think about it as like a relationship with that particular editor. So like, even if they say no, like that doesn't mean you should stop pitching them. And,
okay. There was bound to be a student that asked, what is the pay like in your line of work?
Oh yeah. I'm actually happy to answer that question, because I think like pay transparency is really important. It varies a lot from year to year, because I set my own schedule, and but last year I made about $50,000 US dollars.
Okay.
That's before taxes. And I know like freelance writers can make a lot more than that, and then freelance writers can make a lot less than that. And so I'm happy because I've been able to support myself on that income. And I get paid like most of the time per assignment, and often by the word. So like the editor and I will decide beforehand, like, I'm going to write this many words, and then they'll pay me a certain rate. And those rates are very different from place to place. They can be as low as like, 25 cents a word up to like $2 a word. I think like for me, most of the time, like the highest I've gotten is like $1.75 a word. Like I know like there are people who get paid even more than that. Like they're usually like people who are like very famous and high demand. And then like there are also people who get paid very little. And so there's just like a lot of disparity. And so you have to be very conscious about how you pick your assignments, and like how to negotiate, and to basically say no if it's not going to work for you.
So if you agree to do a 500 word piece, do you get paid 500 times whatever that is, or do you get paid the exact number of words that you did write in the end, which might have been like 517?
Oh, that's like it's very publication dependent, but like one of the publications I write for, they do like how many we assign to you, or how many, like basically it's like whichever is more. So if it was 517, they pay me for 517. But the caveat is like it's after the final edit, so it's not like I can like,
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
there are students that are definitely trying to just increase the word count at the end of assignments anyway. I just wonder whether you do that and just have a big long end sentence that keeps going and going.
You know, that is the type of thing that is heavily, like, that would get me in hot water with editors. Like, they would not want to work with me. So
Yeah.
I understand the like, you know, impetus to thinking like that might be the case, but actually like it's pretty disincentivized because you don't want to make the people who pay you mad at you.
Yeah. You also write for YouTube and for Physics Girl on YouTube. How did that start? Was this another internship? You're having internships that open doors left, right, and center. Is that what happened?
Oh, yeah. Well, I had two main internships. One of them was with the radio station, and the other one was at Wired. And then after that, I have not been taking internships.
Okay.
Because the internship at Wired was paid, but I did not want to have. I no longer had my graduate school stipend, so I need to be paid.
Okay, good.
And so I got into that also through the connections that I made at the Wired internship. Like somebody else who had gotten that internship knew somebody who needed a physics, knew the physics girl, knew Dianna, who hosts the show. And so that's how we got in touch. Like basically she just gave, my friend gave my email to Dianna, and Dianna emailed me, and that's how.
Okay. Pretty easy then. I
Yes.
never even realized that was a thing. I guess maybe I was just really naive that all of these YouTubers were doing all their own stuff, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, well, actually, Dianna had been doing it all, but then then she got like a production deal. Like, so she needed to release videos like much faster, like to meet the demands of like she got a deal from PBS, and so she then had money for a writer. And so I think a lot of YouTubers do start out with like self-production, but then like when they take off, like they need a team to like really produce regularly.
I'd really never thought about it before. It's really amazing. And is the process for that the same as writing an article? Do you kind of pitch ideas to Dianna, or do you get asked more specifically in that case?
A little bit of both. I would say right now, mostly Dianna, she decides like what video she wants to make, and then she gets me to do stuff for the video that she's decided. There were a couple videos, like especially in the first few years where we were working together, that like there's a video on like how touch screens work, and then there's also one on what was it? Oh, like there's one on the ultraviolet catastrophe, which is basically the how physicists discovered like quantum mechanics was a thing. And I came up with those ideas, and she liked them.
Oh, cool. Okay. In the future, do you see scientific literacy becoming more important for the voter and politician?
Right. Yeah, I definitely think that it is important for the voter and the politician, because the politicians have to make decisions about human affairs, societal affairs, and science is like a big part of our infrastructure now, like with computers, phones, like AI, medicine, like all this stuff. Like politicians have to make decisions on it, and so it's important for them to be scientifically literate.
Okay, cool. There's an uber specific question. Someone has clearly read some of your articles, because they're all linked on your website. They've asked, and I don't know what your answer is going to be to this, because it took me a while to unpack the question. It's got so many different bits of physics in one place. What do you think the impacts of quantum computing will be in achieving sustainable fusion power What do you think the impact of this will be on the environment, specifically relating to air pollution?
Right. And you sent me these questions in advance. So I also looked at the question, Googled some things. I don't know that I can answer that question because, so the question is about quantum computing, fusion power, and air pollution all at once.
Yes.
And so I would just say that with respect to quantum computing and also with respect to fusion, that they are very emerging technologies. So with quantum computing, they're not really sure like what it's even good for yet. And so I think I saw like one white paper from the U.S. government where they were talking about like potentially like how it might be useful in like plasma physics modeling, which would pertain to fusion, but also with fusion, like it has not been shown that you can do nuclear fusion with like you can produce more energy than you put in. Like basically it's like you can't like people have done nuclear fusion, like fusing atom nuclei, but you end up having to use more energy than you get out. So like that's not a sustainable energy.
Yeah, because that is still just a technological thing, isn't it? You know, the students that are looking at this, they'll have a rough understanding of fusion, and theoretically it's possible, but it's our technology currently that's holding us back from getting those energetic gains from it, right?
Yeah, and so I guess just to sum that all up, I would say that the
spheres
of quantum computing and fusion and air pollution scientists have not merged. The scientists who study each of them are kind of still in their own, like they're still like figuring out things in their own sphere. They have not merged.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think there's so much interdisciplinary stuff that it's going to be so pertinent to the next generation of scientists, because there are so many of the problems in kind of physics and chemistry that we've not finished them, but there's a lot of answers now to a lot of questions, and there are more unanswered questions now in those little gaps between ideas, like you said. So I think I often get asked about, you know, what is there left to do in physics? You know, you've had quite a long go at it. Surely you've answered everything by now. And it's those gaps then in between ideas where I kind of point people to. And I think that's actually a really good example. I'd never really thought about that as an example before. So thank you to Ollie for pointing it out, and thank you to you for pointing out that that's the issue with it, that it's those interdisciplinary things. We've taken up loads of your time, and I'm so grateful. I've got one more question for you, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
And that is, what's the most enjoyable topic or enjoyable article that you've ever written or researched?
I really enjoy writing about metrology, so like the science of measurement. So like I wrote about like the kilogram being redefined in 2018, like and also just like the entire SI system being redefined. And the reason I like it so much is because I feel like all other scientific experiments rest on it. And so it feels like I'm getting to the sort of like fundamental thing that we know, because metrology is all about what we are sure we know and how certain we know it, basically. And so like I just have a lot of fun thinking about it, and it soothes me that like there are people who are so, you know, so detail oriented. They like they got to be able to tell you to like however many significant figures, like this is how well we know what a centimeter is, or you know, whatever the unit is.
It's nice to know someone out there is sure of something, even if it is just what a meter is. Somebody's got a handle on that. And that's definitely not a meter, by the way. A meter's over here, but somebody out there knows exactly what a meter is, and they've thought about it. And I think it is quite a settling idea that physicists are in control of something.
I think the other thing that I really like about like the metrology as well is that there is a human element to it. Like when I went to the SI redefinition in Paris, like those like diplomats had to vote on it. Like there's a treaty of the meter. So like, yes, the scientists supply the work, but then people have to recognize the unit.
Yeah.
And so like that, I enjoyed sort of it's like an intersection between like the science and society.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you very much for your time today. It's really been appreciated. It's been absolutely lovely to talk to you.
Yeah. Are you gonna cut this down at all, or is
Yeah,
it?
I will. Yeah.
Okay. It was long. It was long.
This
Yeah,
bit's definitely
So,
staying in though.
okay. Good. Yeah. No, this was really fun, and thank you for inviting me.
No, you're really, really welcome. I'll pause the recording there.